Welcome to Real Rockford Files, for tales of the paranormal, supernatural, and the flat-out unbelievable. Today I'm going to be sharing ghost stories from North Dakota. Let's get into it. Story 1. It was my second week working at my town's local theater. My boss, who's been running the place for years, forgot to mention Otis. Otis was the first owner of the building. He used to hold illegal drinking and gambling parties in the basement a long time ago. There's a local legend that he was shot when caught cheating, but I don't know if that's true. So I was the only one working that night besides my boss, but he was outside washing windows. I just finished refilling the candy counter and I turned out the light. I went upstairs to get some popcorn bags, and I thought I heard Ted, my boss, climbing the stairs with his cane, but nobody was there. Honestly, those stairs are loud, and someone was definitely on them. I got a little freaked out. I started to walk back down, but the door slammed shut and locked. I screamed and pounded on the door until 20 minutes later, Ted came upstairs and helped me. He just chuckled and told me Otis was a practical joker. Next time he does that, Ted told me, just scold him and tell him to open the door. I encountered Otis again another time. He locked me in the supply closet. My heart pounded, but I stayed calm. I said in my sternest voice possible that I was busy and he needed to unlock the door. He did. Now I have a friendly relationship with Otis. He'll hide the candy or flick the lights on and off. Once he did pull my hair. I got angry and told him never to touch me again because it scared me. He hasn't done anything like that since. I just wanted everyone to know that not all ghosts are bad. Otis definitely isn't. Story 2. When my family moved here from Nebraska, it was the beginning of summer vacation. I was a hyperactive first grader then, and Mom didn't want me in the way of unpacking, so she enrolled me in a day camp program for kids 1st through 5th grade through the YMCA, where counselors took us around to parks and swimming at the lake on a daily basis. I had 2 friends there, Nikki, who was older than me and the leader of the group, and Tracy, who was younger than me and would follow Nikki and me everywhere. I was sort of a sidekick to Nikki, the one who always stood behind her saying, yeah, whenever she was in a spat with another kid. So anyway, on to the ghost part. Everyone told us never use the bathroom alone. It's okay to go to ones in the locker room by yourself, but never under any circumstances go to the one by the front door by yourself. Same goes for the ones by the computer room. Being little kids, we followed this rule pretty closely most of the time. There was one time, though, when we were changing from our clothes into our bathing suits, getting ready to go to the lake, and it was just the 3 of us in there when it started. We were all mostly naked and searched for our bags and our suits, so we were pretty much trapped. There was a loud wham noise. We looked at each other, shrugged uneasily, and went back to searching for our suits. Then we heard the noise again, accompanied by a yelping quack, like someone stepping on a duck. We froze, staring at each other with wide eyes. The blinding lights that they always put in public restrooms flickered and then dimmed, taking on a yellow color. There was a sound like someone walking across tile, and then the lights went out altogether. We screamed, grabbed clothes or beach towels, and went tearing out of there, running down the hall in our underwear, holding shirts over ourselves. The counselors were not real pleased with us and were debating whether to call our parents, but we kept insisting that there was really something in the bathroom. They went to have a look, and we trailed apprehensively behind. But the lights were on, and there were no strange noises, just clothes scattered across the floor. People also said that one of the downstairs playrooms was haunted. Little kids weren't allowed there because there was all the indoor playground equipment that you had to be certain height to use, so I didn't see that room until I got re-enrolled the following year. There was a door joining into one of the pools, so it always felt damp and kind of moldy. At first I thought that was where the stories came from, but then one day after everyone had left, I ran back for something and toys were falling out of the toy box every time I turned my back, even though it wasn't all the way full. The building always had a kind of oppressive air around it. The adults say it's just from the mold and damp, which they have been trying to get rid of ever since a pipe broke a few years ago, but the kids all believe it's a ghost. Story 3. I have two stories to share, so I might as well lump them together. The first one has been in my family for several generations now and has probably been embellished quite a bit over the years, but I'll put it in anyway. My mother's father's father, my great-grandpa, was walking home from school. It was one of those one-room schoolhouses out on the prairie, and when he walked home, it was almost always after dark. So anyways, this one particular day he was walking home like always when he heard something walking behind him. It was in the prairie grass behind him and off to the right. He thought, okay, there's some kind of animal going the same way as me. It'll probably go away soon. So he walked for a few more minutes, but he could still hear it behind him. He decided that it was just one of his friends playing a joke on him. So he would suddenly turn around and stand still, and he would catch him. So he did, and the noise stopped, and there was no one there. He stood like that for a while, and then he decided that this was silly and he needed to get home. As soon as he started walking again, though, he could hear it again. He could hear the swish of the grass being pushed aside, and he imagined he could hear faint breathing. I don't know whether he really could hear breathing or if that was added to make the story more interesting. Anyway, it was really dark by now and the stars were starting to come out. He finally decided enough was enough and he ran into the grass, shouting and waving his arms and beating randomly at the grass. Then he just stood there, waiting for something to happen. A clump of grass right in front of him rustled, and then he heard a low, angry hiss. Then the grass rustled again, and he could see the grass shifting as the thing moved away from him. He stood there for a few minutes, and then he suddenly felt really panicked, and he ran all the rest of the way home. He never found out what had been following him. Personally, I don't know what to believe. It might have been a stray cat, but a cat would have shown itself, so I figured I would ask what you thought. The other story is about some things that happened in my house. My family still lives here, but since I became a teenager, I haven't experienced anything else. Maybe because I'm not naturally sensitive, it's just that everyone can see when they're young. The first thing that happened to me was when I was 6. I didn't want to go to bed, so even though my parents told me to stay in my room, I went down to the kitchen for a glass of water. As I walked past the hallway, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a black hooded figure walking into one of the rooms along the hall. I walked right by and then did a double take and ran to look into the room it had gone into. I didn't see it, so I ran upstairs and hid under the covers. The next thing was maybe a year later. My parents and I were staying in a hotel over Christmas, and a bunch of relatives were also staying there. I really liked my cousin's hotel room, but ours creeped me out. It was cold in there no matter how high we turned the thermostat, and it was filled with that eerie, heavy kind of feeling that makes you think there's something behind you. I had nightmares every night we were there, and then on the last night the thing showed itself. I woke up suddenly as though someone had been touching me, and floating above me was this thing. I can't describe it as anything but a thing. Sometimes when I have bad dreams, I'll pinch myself and wake up, so as soon as I saw this thing, I curled my hands into a fist and dug my fingernails into my palm. It hurt, and I didn't wake up. The thing above me was red, yellow, and green. I could see the colors clearly in the dark room. It looked a bit like a bird with a funny thing on its head, and it had really claw-like hands and pimply skin. Around the edges, it looked like smoke. It hovered over me for about 10 seconds, then the smoke spread all across it, and it dissolved. I didn't know what to do, so I just crawled down under the covers and rolled into a ball. The next morning, I asked my parents if they had seen anything, and they hadn't. The freaky part was that the bird thing may have followed me home. About a month later, I couldn't sleep, and I was laying on my side staring at my wall. I was thinking about my Connect the Dots book and wondering what I would get if I connected the little bumps on the plaster. As I stared at them, they started to move. At first, they all moved in one direction like they were marching. I think I made them do that by making my eyes go out of focus. Suddenly, they stopped marching and started forming shapes, mainly circles and stars, but there were other shapes too. Then they all moved in a spiral pattern. By this time, I was enjoying the show and looking forward to seeing what they would do next. So when they all started going to one spot in the middle, I wasn't scared. But when I saw what shape they were making, I freaked out. It was a vulture-type bird with claw-like hands, and was wearing one of those floppy hats and the old ladies in cartoons always wear. It looked wizened like an old lady. I was seeing a profile of it, and the one eye I could see had a clever, nasty look to it and was looking right at me. Then it started to move. I thought, no, stop it. I don't like this anymore, and the plaster stopped moving. The next day I had a friend over for a play date and showed her the spot on the wall and asked her if the plaster reminded her of anything. She said that it looked a little like a bird in a hat, which really freaked me out. The bird stayed frozen in the plaster until about 5 years ago when it started fading. Now you can only see it if you know where to look, but it's still there. What do you think it was, and why did it pick me to follow? Story 4. I just moved into an old house. The company I'm renting from said it was built in the 1920s, although I'm not sure. Well, I moved in and I kept spending the night at the house I was moving out of. The first night I spent the night here, I woke up at 3 a.m. to all 4 of my animals running up the stairs and jumping into bed with me. 2 dogs and 2 cats. One dog and both cats lay down on the bed, and my boxer stood above me with his hind legs on one side of my body and his front on the other side, and stared at my bedroom door, which I had closed. I lay in bed trying to go back to sleep. Around 3:30 I heard someone walking up the stairs go to the top, and then I heard the water in the bathroom running. The water turned off and it sounded as if someone was brushing their teeth and fast forward, a really, really fast brushing that normal people don't do. Then I heard footsteps come up to my bedroom door and stop. About 10 seconds later I heard a loud thud in the middle of my room. My boxer Loki standing watching toward the thud. Then I heard something in my closet where I keep my cat food and water, and something was slurping at the water. Then it stopped. The next morning I woke at 3 a.m. again, but I turned on some loud music so I could ignore anything that happened. Story 5. This is one of the first experiences that I had with the paranormal, and of course, it's true. I was 13 years old and was very close to my Uncle Melvin. He went through some rough times in his life, been through a divorce and had alcohol problems. My mother was his sister, and he stayed with us quite a bit. One night I was sleeping. I awoke to see my Uncle Mel standing by my closet door. I sat up in bed and tried to focus in the dark. Sure enough, it was my uncle, and I said, "What are you doing?" He lifted up his arm and moved it slowly back and forth. Now I believe he was waving, and slowly he started to dissipate. I jumped out of bed and ran into the kitchen, only to find my mother on the phone crying. When she hung up the phone, before I could tell her my experience, she said to me, "It's horrible news. Uncle Melvin is gone." It had been a sudden accident, and I believe he came to me to bid farewell. I have had many other experiences since this. Most of the spirits we see are not here to harm us. Once again, I said most, not all. I have had recurring visits from many spirits, and as soon as I start to communicate with them, they never come back. I make this statement because I have read over other stories. Many people seem to be in fear. I'm not. Story 6. This is my second story submission, and as the other one is completely true. I have many more to share as my entire life I had paranormal experiences. I also believe to be insightful, and it does run in the family. Here goes. The house I lived in when I was young had more than one spirit in it. There was both good and evil in the house, and would be too much to list for one story, so you'll be hearing from me again. This is the incident of the ghost in the closet. The house I lived in was very old, and all the old style fixtures, doors and high windows. My bedroom had a huge closet with a wooden door on it. Every night, almost every night, while I was laying in bed trying to fall asleep, I would hear someone tiptoeing to the bed. The floors would creak, and I could feel the presence standing over me and watching me for a few minutes. After that, the presence would turn around and walk away, into the closet. I don't know how I knew this, because during these times I never saw anything, just felt and heard a presence. At first it totally freaked me out, but after a while I got used to it, and it was almost a nightly ritual. I look forward to this nightly visit. One evening I was in the bathroom, which was right across from my bedroom, and I saw a teenage girl with long brown hair walk into the closet in my bedroom. I followed because I thought it was my sister who looked just like her. I spoke out my sister's name, but the spirit just walked right through the door into the closet. I ran downstairs only to find my sister watching TV in the living room. Well, my question for all of you experienced or not experienced people with the paranormal, do you think it was just a ghost I saw, or do you think the spirit could have been my guide, or is it trying to trick me? Story 7. When we brought my daughter home from the hospital, my son was 4 years old. The labor and delivery was much less stressful than my first. My daughter also slept very well through the night, for the most part, and I remember thinking that I deserved this after the hundreds of sleepless nights I spent with my son. Everything was very blissful until my daughter was about 4 weeks old. Things started changing in the house gradually. Lights would turn on and off sporadically. The TVs would flip on and then off. Things would go missing. Much of this I put off as coincidence or simple mishaps. However, things took a turn for the worse. The house turned into an angry atmosphere. I would hear banging and slamming going on, and when I tried to locate where it was coming from, I could never find it. My son was in the bathroom once, and as soon as he walked away from the toilet, a heavy glass light fixture came crashing down, barely missing him. We would hear crying and meowing sounds coming from the basement, only to investigate and never find anything. All the children's toys would make their sounds at odd hours of the night. I remember one night hardly sleeping a wink because the toys would take turns going off. First off the electric drums, then a toy fire engine, and then a doll who would continually say, "Pick me up, Mommy, pick me up, Mommy." That night I threw all the toys out on the driveway and ended up throwing them all away because it freaked me out so much. One rainy day, my son, baby daughter, and I were in the southwest bedroom. I was reading books to them when all of a sudden we heard the worst sound I've ever heard in my life. It sounded as if a million pieces of glass shattered inside the walls of the bedroom. It was a shrieking, shrilling sound, and my son looked at me and said, "Mommy, let's leave this house." We did leave the house that afternoon, but did return. A person I know who is very spiritual came into the house and went through every room, and her and I prayed. We also told the spirit or entity to please leave the house and leave us alone. Gradually, things started getting better, and the angry feeling left. I've always thought that maybe this was a poltergeist haunting, but I'm not sure. I have witnessed other things in this house and other places, but I will tell those another time. Don't forget to subscribe for more stories. Hope you enjoyed.